So again, now we add diminishing marginal utility. 10 utils I spend on 20 utils I spend, right? For every dollar I spend, I should move, right? So I need to move money away from Taco Bell and toward Chipotle. As I do that, my marginal utility at Taco Bell goes up, my marginal utility at Chipotle goes down. And I know I keep saying this, but we need to think this way, right? Economists think this way, diminishing marginal utility. Yes, diminishing marginal utility. I need to reallocate my resources toward things that give me lots of utility per dollar. Right? So now I moved $1 from Taco Bell to Chipotle. Now I'm getting 11 utils for every dollar I spend at Taco Bell. And I'm getting 18 utils for every dollar I spend at Chipotle. And the next time maybe it's 12 and 16. And the next time maybe it's 14 and 14. And now I've reallocated my spending to make myself better off. All right. Now, central to this is this idea of revealed preference. I can't measure utility, right? I don't have this meter that I can stick in your arm or attach to your fingers or something and tell me how happy you are. So how do we figure out what actually is going on in the world? And the answer is we look for price changes. And we see what happens when prices change. If we believe at least that we were at MUX over PX equals MUY over PY, and then one of those P's change, we can see how people change their behavior because the price changed, and that indirectly tells us what the utility had to be to keep the equal sign equal. You got that? If you go back to the equation, let's go back to the equation. If that goes up, yes, now somehow I need to keep this equation even. If that goes up, this number gets smaller, so I should buy less of this, I should buy more of this, until the thing balances out. How much more I buy tells me what those MUs are. So again, I can reveal your preferences. I can't measure utility, but I can figure out what your actual, not in 12.2 utils or what I can really tell what you like and don't like and how much you like things and how much you don't like things by looking at the price changes. Okay? We have studied, for example, in Las Vegas, what happens. We want to know what happens to people when they build a casino, a neighborhood casino near them. If you ask people, you get answers, but people don't really know. It's shocking how little people actually know. Instead, what we do is look at things like what happens to house prices in the neighborhood. And we can tell from what happens to house prices in the neighborhood and how far out house prices change and how much they change, we can get an estimate of what the effect of that neighborhood casino is. And so we know that, in fact, building a neighborhood casino lowers the value of houses within about a mile of that casino, and kind of in a decreasing way. The closer you are, the more. And we can measure what's going on with people by looking at how these price changes affected their behaviors. Right? Okay. One of the things that confused Adam Smith and his buddies was what we call the paradox of value. Adam Smith and his friends didn't get the marginal thing yet. They sort of knew it was out there, but they really didn't. If that makes any sense. They didn't have it down the way we have it down now. So they had these paradoxes. They believed that the value of something should come from a total, and that total was really about how much it costs to make. So the prices of things should be correlated to how much they cost to make. But then they had problems because water, which is extremely valuable to us, has a low price. Diamonds, which are not necessary, have a high price. Well, why? The answer is marginal. We have, most of us, not, now if you live in Africa, the story may be different here, but here in the United States, most of us can take the faucet and turn it on, and out comes all the water that we needed. So we don't need more water than we have, marginal. Its value is zero because the marginal benefit of more water is zero. Diamonds, apparently people like diamonds, and therefore the marginal value of them is not zero because people want more of them. At least some people want more of them. Okay? So again, value comes from us wanting more of things. People say, oh, it's so sad that, NBA players get paid so much more than school teachers. Well, a lot more people can be school teachers than can be basketball players, and I've said that before. The marginal basketball player versus the marginal school teacher, it's easier to find more school teachers than it is to find more NBA players. So the price of the NBA player is going to be higher than the price of the school teacher. And it's sad, but it's true. Okay? So diamonds have a high margin utility. Because of that, they have low consumer surplus. We're paying very close to what we actually think they're worth. We're not going to get much consumer surplus out of them, but they have high margin utility. So we get satisfaction out of them, but not much consumer surplus. Water, because it has a low price and a low margin utility, we don't get all that much satisfaction out of the water itself, but we're getting a lot of consumer surplus because we're alive. Right? Without the water, we're not alive. Without the diamonds, we're still alive. So the diamonds are giving us a lot of margin utility, but not much consumer surplus. The water's giving us not much margin utility, but lots of consumer surplus. Okay. So to me, the most fun thing that's going on in economics these days is microeconomics these days is what's called behavioral economics. Behavioral economics actually set out through doing experiments, like experiments with real people in real situations, to say, maybe our theory of consumer behavior isn't correct, and maybe we need to alter the way we think about what consumers do. Kind of the first person, and he didn't call it this, but the first person who headed us this direction is this guy named Herb Simon, who won the Nobel Prize for doing it. The important thing about him is his daughter used to babysit me when I was little. So maybe that's why I'm an economist. I don't know. He invented this concept called bounded rationality. Bounded means that we have limits. Economics says that we are rational, that we do this pleasure and pain calculus, that we figure out what is the best thing for us to do, and that's what we're doing. Okay? And we talked about rationality at the beginning. Rational to an economist doesn't mean the same thing it does to a psychologist. Rational to an economist means you do that thing that's best for you. So somebody might do something that you think is crazy, right? They knock on the door 3 times when they leave work in the morning because they think they need to do that for the day to be good. And you go, that's obsessive compulsive. You're crazy. But if economist says, if they think they need to do that to have a good day at work, that's not crazy. That's rational. Right? Simon says, the amount of information we need to know to actually do that is too large, and there's no way any human being can actually figure out what makes them best off. Okay? What's the chance when you get married you actually are marrying the best person out of the 6.5 billion people on Earth? So we live in this world where we're bounded. where we're making these rational choices. We're doing what's best for us, limited by the information that we have. And so your book talks about bounded willpower and bounded self-interest. Everything, all these concepts that economists have, we're bounded by things. We have limits. Okay? And behavioral economics says, well, how do we act based on our limits? And, in fact, it's going to say that we have these innate biases. And we mentioned this once before, that people have biases. I don't mean necessarily that you don't like short people or something. Biases mean that you look at the world in a way that's unrealistic or interesting. Okay, so this lack of information and the fact that it costs you money to get information and it costs you money to make transactions. So an economist might look at your shopping list and tell you that to maximize what's in your shopping list, you should go to this grocery store to buy the meat and this grocery store to buy the vegetables and a third grocery store to buy everything else. Well, you're not going to do that. And the reason you're not going to do that is, A, it would cost you money to figure out that that's what you should do. B, and time. B, it would cost you extra time to drive to 3 stores. C, it's going to cost you gas money to drive to 3. There's these transaction costs that make it more expensive for you to do what an economist would think is the best thing. So you use something called heuristics. Heuristic is a fancy word for rule of thumb. I used to shop at the Albertsons by my house, and I just shopped there. And then it got bought out by this other company, and I kept shopping there, but I quickly realized that this company was horrible. Their selection was horrible. The stuff was horrible. So I switched to the Vons, which is about a mile further from my house. Okay? I looked around. There's 2 other grocery stores I could have shopped at. I checked out those 2 other grocery stores. I ended up at the Vons. Now, the Albertsons is back. Have I gone back there? No, I don't know anything about it. My rule of thumb says, as long as I'm happy at my current grocery store, why would I spend the time and trouble to check out the other ones? If there's something new and exciting and they give me some reason to go there, or Vons makes me mad and they give me some reason to go check out a competitor, now maybe I go do that. But I follow rules of thumb. I stick with what I know. I stick with this. I drive home this way. Even though there might be a better way to drive home, I don't know it because this is the way I drive home. I follow rules of thumb. These rules of thumb lower my transaction cost. Right? So I'm maximizing my utility by lowering my transaction cost as opposed to try to find the things that really give me the highest utility. I lower my transaction costs by heuristics, rules of thumb.